when it is a beautiful sunny day like this, me and my youngest, who's right there, we like to go for a walk after we put my oldest on the school bus. Well, I like to go for a walk. I don't know that he does very much. Do you like going for walks?
No.
No, he says no. But it's been a action-packed couple weeks. On top of food poisoning last week, a website crash last week. It's all fixed now. You what? Huh? I love walks, and you love home. I love walks, and he loves home. That's the truth. This week, I needed a new memory card, which turned into an adventure within itself. Decided I would try to actually go to a store to buy the memory card, because I'm kind of like, I love Amazon, but I recognize that if we want stores to keep existing, we have to actually go to them. Herein lies the problem, in that the store didn't have any memory cards. Shelves were empty. So I had to buy it on Amazon. And I keep running into the same problem over and over and over. When I actually do go to a store to try to buy something, it's either way overpriced or just out of stock. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to do about that. How am I supposed to patronize your store? Just finished recording 2 different episodes of Cincy Brewcast, and figured I would come swing by Higher Gravity Summit Park. It's Tuesday, so I know there's some other people here recording their podcast, and it's always kind of fun bugging them while they do it. So that's what we'll do. Hey, truth beer consequences. Somehow ended up at a B-Dubs. 16 Lots, Southern Outpost. Not only is 16 Lots Southern Outpost wonderful for Newport on the Levee as a development and as a place to go spend time, it's really, really great tap room. You can tell that they put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. There are so many little details that kind of play into this bigger theme, this nautical Jules Verne meets H.G. Wells thing. It's really hard to describe. You guys just really need to go there, check it out for yourself. The beer is great, the food is great, the space is great, the location is great. They've got a lot going for them, but you kind of have to see for yourself. Here's the thing. When you come off of a really lousy week like I had last week, and it was really lousy, you need something to kind of refresh and recharge you. And the last few nights have definitely done that. So I'm excited. I'm excited about where things are in the world of the Gnome. I'm excited about where things are in the world of Cincinnati beer right now. Excited about the weather. I'm excited about everything, so good. I'm in a good mood. Hope you are. If not, we should grab a beer sometime. We'll see you. Cheers, everybody.